Hey, thanks for watching. And you're watching Growth Hacks, where we dive into how to scale your business. I'm your host, Ramon Ray, founder of smarthustle.com and entrepreneur in residence at Oracle NetSuite. I'm joined today by my co-hosts, my friends, and business experts, Kedma Ough, who's the author of Target Funding, a small business expert and coach, and so much more. And you can find her at kedmaough.com, and Loren Feldman, who's the producer, who's the host of the 21 Hats podcast. You definitely have to check that out at 21hats.com. Kedma, I hope you're well. Loren, I hope you're well. Kedma, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm always so delighted about these episodes. I just can't wait to dig in.
Indeed, it's going to be good. Loren, how are things in your world, man?
I'm here with you and Kedma. I'm doing great.
Awesome. I feel the same. So listen, Loren and Kedma, as you both know, and again, thanks for the Growth Hacks community who's listening to us right now. We have another amazing topic, and it seems that prices for everything from your morning coffee, I do drink 1 cup of coffee a day, to airfare and more are going higher and higher and higher. With the annual inflation rate hitting about 5.4% in June, it's been the highest it's been since 2008. Two things I think are partly to blame for what we're seeing. One, supply chain issues, and two, labor shortages. And many businesses are being forced to reevaluate their own prices. I'm sure that's many of you out there watching us today. And today, we're diving into just why that's happening with discussions on about two main things. One, how to know if and when it's time to raise prices and how to communicate those changes to your customers. Kedma, I'll turn first to you. Small businesses are having a hard time meeting demand. You have the hiring challenges, which we've talked about in our earlier Growth Hacks episode, and supply chain issues. Kedma, what are you seeing today regarding those two things, which both affect pricing? What are you saying, Kedma?
Well, certainly what I'm seeing is because of that shortage, they may not be able to supply all the customers with what they want. And sometimes price has to happen. There has to be a price increase. However, we're also seeing some uniqueness because of certain shortages. Businesses are rethinking their supply chain. Businesses are rethinking what they need to bring in to support their customers. They're becoming a little bit more inventive. I know certainly with the bleach situation, there was a major shortage. I was working with companies that were trying to work around and look at other solutions. So what I want to share is what I love about small businesses is no matter what's happening in the world, they are flexible. Yeah. They are flexible. So today I hope to talk more about flexibility and pricing.
Yeah, Loren, that's very true, Kedma. Loren, we have the Oracle NetSuite customer base is very diverse. We have very large companies, we have startups, Loren, that are growing bigger, and we have smaller businesses. And my question to you, it could be a political question, is it any harder or easier for smaller companies versus large companies to raise their prices? What are you seeing in the business owners? Because I know the people you talk to span that same sector. What are you seeing versus smaller companies versus larger companies and the challenges of raising prices? What are you saying, Loren?
I think it's definitely harder for smaller companies. There are a couple of reasons for that. At a larger company, there are usually more resources. There are things they can do. One of the things we've seen a lot of is larger companies are changing their packaging. So they don't technically raise their price, but they give you a smaller package with less in it. So effectively, they have raised their prices and they're hoping nobody notices. It's a little bit harder for a small business to adjust like that and do something like that. The other issue for a smaller business, I think, is psychological. Smaller businesses, even in good times, tend to price too low. They're reluctant to raise prices even when they need to, and perhaps more importantly, even when they just should, because they can. And at a time like this, it becomes even more imperative, and I think they really have to think more about it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right, Loren. The last time I opened up a bag of chips, I just pretended that the air was delicious. I just held it in my hand as I emptied the bag. Before we jump into our amazing experts, just two questions I'll ask both of you, Loren and Kedma. Kedma, I'll turn first to you. Any thoughts of how we ask or how we explain to our customers? And I know our experts coming up are going to help us answer that. But what do you say, Kedma? How do we tell our customers, hey, we've had to raise our prices 1%, 2%, 5%? How do we do that?
Yeah, I will always say we have to raise our value. So Ramon, we're going to have to raise our value because given the changes in the environment, we've now introduced 1, 2, 3. And because of that, we're raising our value. Or we can also look at it from, we're not only, we're going to find a way to do cost allocation, but we're going to be bundling. I would rather have a long-term value customer than someone who's short-term that comes and leaves. So we can negotiate many ways, but the first thing I'm going to do is sell on value and then explain why we're raising the prices.
Good point. Loren, what are you saying? Anything different than what Kedma is saying about how we can telegraph that, explain that to our customers that we've had to raise prices?
You know, I think Kedma's right. It is about value. You know, if you can't raise your prices, that may indicate you have a bigger problem than a pricing problem. That means you have a business model problem. That means, you know, maybe you're a commodity, you're selling something that people can get somewhere else. And that's a real issue that has to be solved. If people actually want what you're selling, they're probably going to be willing to pay more. And, you know, in a time like this where it's kind of a perfect storm, I mean, what choice do you have? You don't want to ask your customers to pay more, so you're just going to close up shop? I don't think so.
Wow, what a great discussion. I'd now like to introduce and bring to the discussion Matt Rhodus, who's Senior Director of the Go-to-Market and Strategic Initiatives at Oracle NetSuite. Matt, thanks for joining us. I hope things are well in your world. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm going to say I'm going to challenge that you only take one coffee a day, because your energy far exceeds what I'm used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So
I'll take that as a compliment. I appreciate that indeed. We got to go big on the Growth Hack Show.
Indeed, you do.
Indeed. So Matthew, listen, you deal with these things all the time as you're looking at Oracle NetSuite customers, as you're serving them and helping them. One thing I want to touch on first, let's talk about consumer behavior. Clearly, that's changed in the aftermath or in the concurrence of COVID-19. What trends are you seeing with Oracle NetSuite customers, which I would think is a good barometer for what's happening? What trends are you seeing and how consumer behavior has affected how people are buying and selling and reacting to what we're discussing today, these price changes? What can we learn from you, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple ways that you could take this conversation. And the first one is, in an interesting turn of events, what's actually become more popular is Uber convenience. And what I mean by that is, you know, the pickup lanes, the curbside service, the delivery apps that now deliver everything under the sun. I mean, convenience has actually become an all-time high as far as consumers that are able to get goods when they can get goods. And, you know, what's kind of also interesting, connecting that to, to the pricing discussion, is a lot of times in those apps, there's already a surplus added to those goods and people are leveraging and buying them anyway. So in a lot of ways, the change in consumer behavior towards convenience, to quote something that Kedma had said earlier, they're willing to pay for that, that value add, is certainly something that is going to continue. I say, I for one, am not going to let go of curbside service. Any place that still has this post-pandemic, I guarantee I will continue to use. I have become ultimately attached to that, and that is definitely going to stay.
We need a little meme, Matt, that shows you a company saying no curbside and Matt saying, "Oh, you lost a customer. Sorry." Next.
Nope, sorry. It's true. I mean, it's absolutely true. I mean, they're that convenience. It's like I didn't even know that I was missing it in my life. I also have kids, and so the fact that I don't have to get them out of the car seat and then fight to get them back in, I love it. It's changed my life. So that's certainly driving a lot of the consumer behavior. The other thing that I would say also, just before I maybe move on to the next question, is I do also think that in a lot of ways consumers have become a lot more understanding. I think they know and get that the world is a very interesting and different place. So I've consulted and talked to a lot of our customers as now is actually the time to try some new things out, because there was a time where I would tell you one bad customer experience and you'll lose that customer for life. That is not so much the case anymore.
I like that, Matt. So I want to follow up with that, and then Kedma, get ready to give a follow-up to my follow-up. Matt, I'm curious, are you saying, Matt, that we can just raise prices then willy-nilly? Does that mean I can sell this pen for 2 cents? And does that mean I can just tack on, 25-cent fee, 50-cent fee just because of COVID? Or is there some industries or some businesses that may have to be more cautious? Go into that a bit deeper, one level deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. No, price hikes cannot just be whatever they want, wherever they want. That will never fly with anyone. But there are some industries, and maybe all of you that are listening today come from this, but if you're trying to buy a car, you're trying to buy recreational things, there's just insane addendums and price addeds that are being put on because of supply chain shortages. And, you know, if it is a good that you need and there's limited supply out there, you know, yeah, there's a lot more forgiveness. There's a lot more room to add those things. Doesn't mean customers are going to be happy about it. But it's a little bit understandable in those spaces, right? There are other areas where you have to be a lot more careful. You know, in the non-durable, you know, goods section, more on the consumable side, you need to be a little bit more methodical about what you're doing and why you're doing it. But the most important thing that I believe in doing this is transparency.
Absolutely. Kedma, what is your advice to business owners? Matthew's mentioned a few very important words here: uber convenience, right? Transparency, and et cetera, things that it seems like we're in an environment that people do expect there to be some price increase. But Kedma, is there any caution that businesses need to understand, or any other dimensions of this aspect of raising prices because we have to, but also, hey, we are in business to raise a profit? What are you seeing in the market, Kedma?
Yeah, I see a bunch of multiple dimensions. First, I have to say, you know, my son came to me recently and said he wanted this cupcake from a particular bakery. And I went and I said, it's $10, Fallon. Well, I know, Mom, but it's a particular type of bakery and cupcake. And so this really speaks to the value. If a company can show the value, people are willing to pay the price of $10 for a cupcake. I would say convenience, the Uber, absolutely. The two others that are really very prevalent right now, safety. Safety is really important, whether it's safety for my family, safety for my computer. We don't want to be hacked. We don't want to have a cyber threat. Safety and how protocol is managed is really prevalent in how people are perceiving value. And also personalization. One of my favorite ways of looking at things is, I always state, if you can communicate someone else's problem better than they can, they will assume you have the answer to solve their problem. And what we're really talking about is that personalization and saying, well, you know what, Matthew, you're not just another number. Let me walk through everything. Do I understand that? Okay, well, this is the price you're going to pay because of that. So the transparency is critical, but it's education. We're assuming that these are really well-versed customers. They may not know the answer and they may not want to tell us. So you know what I like to do is I don't assume. I tell them everything they need to know, so we're always on the same page.
And it's so powerful, Kedma. Matthew, one follow-up question I want to have for you again, because what I like about talking to you, Matthew, is that you represent thousands and thousands of Oracle NetSuite customers. So you're seeing that literally,
Absolutely.
if not metaphorically. Talk about the aspect of selling direct to the consumer versus selling something like lumber and coal. Is there a difference between, because Kedma has a point, selling a cupcake and me or Kedma buying a $10 cupcake, like you should be doing,
It's a great
versus
cupcake.
though a business buying this, I'll hold the pen up again, 10,000, 50,000, a million of these pens. Any difference we need to think about, Matthew?
Yeah, so there of course there is. Those scenarios are always, you know, there's going to be some differences in them, right? I think the more B2B oriented sale, you know, they are used to fluctuating prices. They are used to things being a little more commoditized, especially, you know, one thing that people don't think a lot about is, you know, the supply chain shortages outside of the pandemic, like what, you know, the winter storms that took out DuPont plants in Texas that have limited plastics and resins and things like that have made everything really challenging to get. I think businesses understand that a little bit more. The question is then do you pass that on to the consumer or not? So I think in a lot of ways that change in behavior really does come to more of the B2C variety. And so, you know, yes, that is the one where you need to be a little bit more methodical, a little more careful, a little more clear in your intent and what you're planning on doing. But it is time. We are at that point where there's not much more a small business can absorb or is willing or able to absorb. So we are definitely at that time where prices are going to go up and they're not going to have a choice otherwise. And I will say one last thing, because I know we're getting close to the time on my segment here, but, you know, as I've kind of even just recently had some conversations with them, right? Yeah, you may be hesitant to raise prices, but you can't afford not to. And if your competitor doesn't, they're not going to make it, and you'll outlast them, right? So in some cases, sometimes just because your competitor hasn't in this climate doesn't mean that you can't if you're going to go under, you know. So because you're not raising your prices. So, you know, there's a lot of elements to consider here, but it really is time to really strongly evaluate what you're going to be doing here.
I love it. Matthew, if we ask you to come back again on Growth Hacks, will you come back again?
Any day with 2 cups of coffee.
Matthew Rhodus with Oracle NetSuite, thanks for joining us on Growth Hacks as we prepare for our next amazing session.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Wow, that was a great segment that Matthew dropped some knowledge on us, Loren and Kedma. I think it was very good. Some things I got out of here. He talked about the Uber customer, as it were, meaning people want speed, 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 and that costs money. So that's one reason, as it were, in a good way to raise our prices. Kedma, what did you get out of some of the comments that Matthew said? What did some of those things mean to you?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the Uber customer, I think about myself, mother with 3 kids. I want convenience. I also want safety, and I certainly want personalization. And what I want to make sure, especially with the customers we serve, is that they're looking at the behaviors that are driving how consumers want to spend money. My rule is simple. If the money is in your wallet, you want to spend it. We just have to convince you why. So I am 100% in agreement with him.
That is true. Loren, what did you like about what Matthew said? What did some of his comments, what most spoke to you?
I guess I would pick up on what he said at the end about how some businesses just don't have a choice. If you want to stay in business, you got to raise your prices. But I would go even a little bit further than that. People don't always think about the advantages you get when you raise prices. I mean, think about it. If you increase your prices 10% and you lose 10% of your customers, you're probably going to get about a wash in terms of revenue, but you're going to be selling less. So if you have a service or if you're making a product and you have cost of goods sold, it's going to cost you less to deliver that service or product. So you're going to make more money as a result of it. The other thing that can happen is if you eliminate your most price sensitive customers, you may be eliminating your worst customers. If you have a service, you're getting rid of the people who are the most trouble. That can be a really positive thing that allows you to focus on your best customers. So there are a lot of ways to come out ahead when you have to raise prices.
And this is why we call the show Growth Hacks. Did you hear what Loren and Kedma just said? Those are growth hacks. Wow, Loren and Kedma, that was an amazing, amazing discussion. Let's go to our next segment because it seems like we're deciding now, right, Loren, right, Kedma, that we're going to raise prices. So I think the question is, how do you communicate these changes to 2 important segments? One, to your customers, they have to know, ooh, prices are changing, being raised, I think is an English word. And 2, to our customers, how do we do that? There's no one better to do this than my friend, small business growth architect and sales trainer, Adrian Miller. And you can learn more about Adrian Miller and all that she does at adrianmiller.com. Adrian, I hope you're well. Thanks for joining us for Oracle NetSuite's Growth Hacks. How are you?
I am fantastic, and thank you for having me. This is great.
Awesome. Good to have you here. So Adrian, listen, 2 questions that you're asked all the time. I know you're the best person for this. Let's talk first, Adrian, about our sales teams. We need to raise prices for whatever reason, but yet the sales team, Adrian, on the front lines, they have to communicate this to customers. Can you give us some guidance of how do we coach our sales teams? Yeah, prices have increased by X%, but yet the customer may say, I'm not going to buy from you, be angry, whatever. What are you telling your clients in this aspect, Adrian?
So let's step back for 1 second. We've always raised prices. This is not such a big new thing. We've always raised prices. I've been in business for decades, and I have approached this conversation without a supply chain problem, without COVID. We've always raised prices. I raise my prices every year, and I've done it for decades. It's just the way it is. So it's interesting to me that we are having this whole topic because it's not brand new news in terms of raising prices. Sales reps don't have to shy away from raising prices and the conversation about raising prices with their clients, as long as they are able to show a value and an improvement in what they're doing. Okay. I think falling back on increased prices for us and poor old me, I want to still make my margin, boo-hoo. No one frankly cares. Okay. They really don't. They don't care if Adrian Miller goes out of business. What they want to see, if I'm going to raise my prices, is an improvement in what I've just given them for the last year. an improvement in value. I want to touch a benefit. Okay. You want your sales team to provide a clear pathway to a benefit and an improvement, and they can wrap the increase around that. And the increase can be provided in stages. There's all sorts of ways to package it. There really are. And the best way is to not try to skulk out of the room with your tail between your legs. Oh my God, I got to raise the price. Let's own it.
Wow, Adrian, see, I no better person, I think, could unpack this and make it very practical. So two things I'm hearing, Adrian. One, indeed, businesses have always raised prices, but I guess due to the media hype or the news or COVID, whatever it is, it's maybe a bigger lens on it. But the second thing I'm bringing out here, Adrian, is that just reframe it. And you've already said it, but stop going in there stuttering, stop going in there apologizing, but it's how we say it. So maybe that's the best training. Teach your sales team just to be better communicators. Am I hearing you right, Adrian?
Yeah, the word is I'm so sorry we have to raise our prices, but I am so psyched to tell you about what we have going on and just be assumptive that they're going to want to pay more to have this. Now, that I'm backing up just a second.
Sure.
Be assumptive because you've done your due diligence. You are continually doing voice of customer communications and research. Okay, you're continuing to look at what they actually want. I like the word want. I think people will pay anything for that cupcake if they want it. As far as I'm concerned, your son didn't need that cupcake. He's not starving to death. Okay. He wanted that cupcake. I don't need much of anything. I'm not Imelda Marcos, but I don't have that many pair of shoes, but trust me, I don't think I need another pair of shoes, especially because I've been barefoot for the last 18 months. The fact is I may want another pair of shoes. So want rises above need. And if we can continue to press the want buttons, and the best way to find out what those want buttons are is to ask. Just ask. They'll tell you. If you ask the right questions, people will tell you what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and what they will pay for it. Sometimes we charge too little. They'll pay more.
That's a good point. Kedma, since you were called out here, I'm going to turn to you, but I want to phrase it this way. Is Adrian a little bit wrong, Kedma? I mean, aren't there people going into stores that go, oh no, it's X dollars? I mean, is it that easy, Kedma? Or is it reframing the question, Kedma? Feel free to push back, or maybe you agree.
Well, I do happen to agree. And if I disagree, you would know. But here's what I would say is if I came to you and I said, we're raising prices, you're going to give me a reluctance. If I came to you and I said, our company is raising value, we're raising value, and this is what the value is going to look like, you're not going to question it because you understand where we're leading first. The second thing is that we are thinking that people want to save money. The reality is that most of us are not that price sensitive. If we are, we're doing economy pricing. There's a whole segment around premium pricing. I am not going to walk in and buy a BMW if it's for $5,000. I don't care. The minute I'm going to see, I'm not going to think it's a good deal. I'm going to think it's a lemon. Okay. So we have to be very clear how we want to show up. If we're trying to show up as the premium pricing, we may not want to keep giving them the best deal. Lastly, I would rather people save me time than save me money. Save me time and save me also what I call drama. Drama is when I have 6 or 7 different things that I have to manage at once. And Adrian comes and says, listen, we're going to take all that. We're going to do bundle pricing. We're going to remove all the headache and you just have to deal with me. Hello. Thank you. Where's the check? So we have to stop from going from just pricing and thinking about what other behaviors we can support.
I love it. Kedma, I think we need a t-shirt. Where's the check? Go ahead, Adrian, please.
I was going to say what Kedma said is you need to hone in on what are the core benefits and improvements that the persons you're trying to sell lean into. So save time is huge for me as well. I will pay anything if it takes less time. But there are some people, and if this is your market, you need to think about this. They have an overabundance of time. They are the people who like to go into the bank and talk to a teller and have a conversation about the weather and if they got their vaccination or anything else. Whereas the rest of us who are interested in time, online banking, drive-through ATM, etc. When was the last time you saw the inside of your bank? So you have to know your customers. What will they lean into? Convenience. Convenience foods have a tremendous market, except for the people who are serious chefs, and they're not going to lean into, a 1 minute mac and cheese. Why do we need 1 minute mac and cheese? Wasn't mac and cheese only 5 minutes before? But and 1 minute costs more. So you have to know what people will lean into. That's going to help you figure out what they'll pay for it. Okay. I love what you said about premium pricing. I did work with a very high-end watch brand where one of their watches costs more than my car.
Wow.
Okay. Seriously. No one bought that watch like bemoaning how much it costs. In fact, they have their sleeve rolled up so you can see that watch. You have to know your customers. You have to know your customers, but let's not get crazy about this. Let's get this fear and loathing about raising prices. We've been raising prices forever and ever and ever. It's not a new thing.
Like only Adrian Miller can give us this information. Adrian, I have 47 more questions to ask you, but our time is up. Adrian, thanks for joining us, and I hope you come back again if we ask you to, please.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Well, as expected, Adrian Miller brought the spice to discussion about price increases. Loren, one thing that Adrian said, which I thought was interesting, she was like, guys, this is much ado about nothing. We've always been raising prices, so why are we making such a big deal about it now? I think she has a point, Loren, but I think that during this time of COVID, there's been a heightened sense of awareness to it. But what do you think? Are we exaggerating this, making this much ado about nothing, Loren, or is there a sincere concern that many of us should have? Where do you fall on that?
No, this is a big deal. Adrian was exactly right. It's an important decision to make, and it's one that successful businesses have been making forever and ever. She's exactly right about that. Successful businesses, it's the ones that struggle, that are reluctant to pull the trigger and raise prices, that get in trouble. The funny thing is, this may be the easiest time there's ever been to raise prices. People know that everything's getting more expensive. They see it themselves in their own lives. They know it's probably true in your business. So they're not going to rebel at a price increase the way they might have at another time.
And Loren, you're right. Even during hurricanes and bad things that are happening, as you know, I live in the New York area, people would accuse you of price gouging. But now I think the word's out on the street that everybody's hurting and everybody's going to have to raise prices in some way. So point taken in that. Kedma, what did you hear from Adrian that most resonated with you that you can underline for us?
Well, she's a spitfire, and I love her shoe collection. We're going to have to see what that looks like. A couple of things. One is, I think she's right on par. And I think what we have to realize is the buying decisions are changing. Even for us as consumers, we no longer want to have homes or businesses full of clutter. So we're making better decisions, and we're willing to pay more for better choices. We may not be buying more, but when we do buy, we're willing to pay more. And I think the conversation has to go back to value, has to be communicated why we're raising it. And if you share that, if you connect, if you educate, your customer will understand. So I love what she said.
Yeah, it was so important. So Kedma, I'm going to raise my prices 30%. Is that okay? Can you send me a check to cover that difference, please?
If it's for the cupcake, I'm going to have to say yes. Whatever the price is, cupcake, we got to get.
Ramon, can I pick a bone with Kedma for 1 second?
Please, yes.
You know, I pretty much agree with everything Kedma says, but I got one problem. No cupcake is worth $10, Kedma. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, you know, that's a good point. That's a good point. The question I always say is, what is the price for my son's happiness?
Okay. At this point, here's what we're going to do, Loren and Kedma. This is the perfect time. Here's what we're going to do. Growth Hacks audience, who's right? Loren or Kedma? Growth Hacks audience, is there ever a time that a cupcake can be worth $10, $20, $25, $30. Is there ever a time? With that, Loren Feldman at 21hats.com. Thank you, my friend, for joining us. Kedma Ough at kedmaough.com, author of Target Funding. Thanks for joining us. And to all of you at Growth Hacks, I just want to remind you, those of you who've already been submitting your questions, already been chatting, we appreciate that. But for those of you who haven't yet, drop them in the comments below. Me, Kedma, Loren, Adrian, Matthew, we're going to be around answering your questions if we haven't already, because we're so glad that you're here today. Big props to Tori, who's producer of this show, and we'll be back on August 19th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And this one, it's all about how to get funding for your business. So spread the word and let people know to join us on August 19th at 11:30 p.m. Pacific time. You don't want to miss it. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you then. This is Ramon Ray on behalf of Oracle NetSuite. Thanks for watching Growth Hacks.